The 21st of November, 2025, Friday. And I just reached out to Pat King to follow up. He's doing a tour. He has several speaking engagements across Canada after the new year. And so we're going to work around those dates to get me back on his podcast. And I wanted to link him up with John from News Updates for Real because he has a big social media presence as well. And I think that they would have a great conversation together. And so I want to see that. So selfishly, I'm like, hey, Pat, I have John's contact information. We've done a podcast before. And so if you'd want to have him on, I'd give him your contact information. So I'm trying to line that up for everyone in Canada because I think there needs to be more collabs with Canadian content providers because there are a lot of people that are on here that we don't have any experience as journalists in the media, any of that stuff. There are a lot of people that are whistleblowers, people that are veterans in so many different capacities within the government, and people that were working with the government, or people that were really screwed over by this current government, and speaking out to that. And so anyways, I'm going to get through some international news updates, mostly Canadian, and then I'm going to get into more CSIS propaganda. And it's not to discredit CSIS as a whole, just like the CIA and the FBI and Global Affairs Canada, etc. But there are people from within, unfortunately, at the higher levels that are misleading people and supporting and enabling narratives that the steering committees within our government that's working with international deep state corrupted individuals, elitists, they're just allowing things to be created as intelligence, and it's fabricated, unfortunately, and sometimes even after the case. And so there are many people within CSIS that are incredible human beings. I know people that I've worked with like within the organization, even part of the field teams, and we're really disheartened by the leadership from within CSIS. This was even just a few years ago, got out of CSIS and went back to the special forces, and thought he could make a better difference within the organization he was in. Turns out it was bullshit what he was dealing with, and then returned. And anyways, I can go on tangents about all of this stuff, but but even during COVID and the Freedom Convoy with Justin Ling, who was a propagandist, extreme radical leftist that was working with Vice News, maybe still is, and with our state-funded propaganda media, working with CTV and CBC, and he lied, painting Diagolon as a right-wing extremist group, going after a veteran who had worked in CSOR, which is also like the Special Forces, another organization from within the CANSOFCOM umbrella. So someone that had been of service to Canada and Canadians at home and abroad, and getting vilified and character assassination, and went to jail and solitary confinement, all that stuff. And just so incredible what happened to him, all because of lies. And there are still people that have not been held accountable yet. So Canada needs to do what people in the US are doing and sue the Crown, all right? Individuals from within, especially the House of Commons. And anyway, I'm going on all these tangents. So this is Kelsey Sharon. I just fell upon her. I actually didn't know who she was, but I don't want to make too many connections here. But I do know the person that ran her through some of her training, and had worked with her, and obviously was senior to her and an officer. She wasn't an officer, but like really like supported her career. And so because when I shared this person that I've known for 20 plus years, 25 plus years, not 25 plus years, sorry, 20 plus years, I'll say 24 years. Yeah, she like responded to this and like told me that. I'm like, oh yeah, I had no idea. And so I'd be interested to doing a collab with her because she said that she kind of reminded her a little bit of like me regarding, I guess, fitness. But yeah, so anyway, so a lot of good things that were said about her. I don't know if she's still in Canada or not. I'm hearing different things that she moved to the US, and I haven't watched enough of her content. She's probably talked about this multiple times. I just don't know. But she does expose a lot of Canadian news, and then she's also spoken in Parliament. So even recently, so she must still live in Canada. I don't know, unless she's just flew in to do this speaking engagement, talking about MAID being offered to veterans, and yeah, so things I've talked about for the last several years as well. And so she just exposed this, our new Veterans Affairs Minister, who is terrible. But I mean, there's close competition for being the worst Veteran Affairs Officer, and absolutely crickets regarding over $4 billion being taken from VAC funding from the budget. No one says anything about that, and yet we're giving so much money again to foreign organizations that are not assisting Canadians at all in any way. So Veteran Affairs Minister says the words respects independence of court in poppy ban decision. So let's see what she has to say.
Okay, so we're going to read this one together because this one's insane, especially on Remembrance Day. But what would we expect from anybody besides Jill McKnight, who is the most unqualified minister we've ever had? And we should all be terrified because she's also the Associate Minister of National Defense and can't even do 5 push-ups. So let's start here. Veterans Affairs Minister respects the independence of the court to ban the poppy. So let's try this one more time. Veterans Affairs Minister Jill McKnight says it's totally okay to ban the poppy in Canada's courtrooms. So if you didn't hate her anymore, you definitely should now. It's not that I'm trying to tell you guys what to think of her, just showing you her insane incompetence and the fact that she's in British Columbia. You know, her office is Delta, which is crazy all to me because there are so many veterans in this area and people are sitting there and going, you're such a great minister. So in her time frame, this is what she's done. She's supported the ban on the poppy. She was embarrassed in the testimony for the Senate. She didn't even know about the Halifax and the other cenotaphs that were out there when she was questioned. She's also taken away $4 billion in aid for veterans in service and care, and somehow people still call her a good minister. I would challenge this woman to a debate in literally anything, and I guarantee she would cave. I would take her job in a heartbeat, and yeah, I'd work with the Liberals just to make this woman go away. She's a disaster and an embarrassment to Canadians and to veterans, and especially on Remembrance Day. You guys should go check out her page because she likes to block and ban veterans too. Okay, so we're going to...
Blocking and banning veterans. I'm assuming she's been blocked and banned. Disgusting. 5 push-ups. You can't even do 5 push-ups, and you're a Veteran Affairs leader. I'm sorry. I think that like if you're going to be working within the military or for the military, you need to at least pass the basic physical fitness requirements and standards. Like that's absolutely ridiculous to me. All right, so I'll shut that down. There's a few more clips I want to share before I get into a video I have not seen yet that I want to share with you. But because I was talking about the budget and stuff like that and immigration issues with refugee status, etc., I wanted to share this. I might have shared this yesterday, but it's important, so I'm going to share it again. So this looks like it's a Mark Weber. And it's important because there was just some of the... I might have the video that I might have shared. It might be too controversial. I might not have shared it. But anyways, if not, then I at least message people and I'll find it. But someone out of the UK anyways, that was talking about people entering the country, claiming refugee status, entering illegally and using that as an umbrella and it not being properly vetted. And that's exactly what we've been doing in Canada. So yet people are saying, yeah, we don't have illegal immigration issues like we do in the US, but that's because of our immigration policies being too loose. Like I've literally been saying for years now. And again, this is not just me doing my own investigations into this. I've actually been communicating with people that work within CBSA at all different levels. And I have for years, and they're the ones that are saying this. They've been screaming this from the rooftops because people from within, they try to address this with their chain of command and they're not listening, right? They're too busy with ArriveCan scam. Anyways, with ArriveCan scams. Why was that so hard to say? Anyways, so this was from Brad Redekop, MP.
Because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing that security.
Okay, yeah, I do remember sharing this with you guys, but I'll share it again.
To speed things up, because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing that.
What's wrong with my internet? Starlink, come on now.
To speed things up, because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing.
They're not short-staffed. They're understaffed. I'm going to say that again. I said it yesterday as well. Okay, there's way too many people coming in trying to exploit our system, our broken system, and they are not being vetted. They're not being screened. They're not. It's just anyway. He'll say
doing
it.
that security screening.
Because we don't have enough people. It's anyways. It's just too much.
Okay, hold on a second here. So you're saying that a refugee claimant coming to Canada goes to a machine and says, I want to be a refugee in Canada, hits a button, and they're in the country? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, it's not a machine, it's an application. So the one-touch system, they're given instructions on how to use that. That connects directly with IRCC, and they're given that documentation to complete on their own once they're in the country. We're not doing that.
So basically, they take out their phone, theoretically, and they tap it a few times, and they are now in the country as a refugee accepted by our country.
Yes, we get some basic data from them, and again, we do the biometrics. Beyond that, they're doing that on their own, yes. So in essence, to speed things up, because we are short-staffed, we're allowing people into the country without first doing that security.
Just needs so much more attention. I hope that goes viral. These are my doggies. We went for a really long walk yesterday. It was nice. It was nice. Gym yesterday.
I held a bake sale.
Okay, so let's see if. Okay, good. I don't have to switch screens. This was so interesting. Okay, so it's a racist bake sale for affirmative action cupcakes. So it's someone that is this is for research purposes. It's not an actual racist, but this is just to do like an experiment within society, just to show you exactly what DEI wokeness is.
Sale. A racist bake sale.
We have different prices here. If you're Asian, $1.50. If you're white, $1. If you're Latino or black, 50 cents.
That's not right.
You got to be out of your goddamn mind.
I didn't come up with this idea. I copied what some students had done. They call it an affirmative action bake sale.
Why does everybody shut down?
Here at Bucknell University, the administrators shut the bake sale down. The Students' Conservative Club said they just wanted to start a conversation about affirmative action, which does make it harder for Asians to get admitted, but easier for blacks and Latinos. But before much conversation started, they were shut down.
I'm trying to make amends for racism and punish the Asians because they have an advantage. They have such high SAT scores.
No, that's stereotyping.
It is stereotyping.
That's not right.
Affirmative action is supposed to help minorities that have been discriminated against. But Latinos and blacks who saw my sign didn't like it.
That makes me feel bad because I'm both Latino and black.
Should I not do this because it might hurt people's feelings?
Not only it should hurt people's feelings, but it's just like out of respect.
It's very hurtful. It's very demeaning.
What is funny to you about people who are less privileged?
But then some people defended me.
You're trying to make a point, right?
Right.
So sometimes you got to do things like that to make a point. It's not racist.
Yes,
People started to think
It's not
about
being
what
racist.
affirmative action means.
She gets it.
No race of people is worth more than another, or less.
Well, do you believe in affirmative action in colleges?
I used to, but I really don't think that it helps.
By the end, most people said equality means no affirmative action.
Everybody should be treated equally, no matter what.
A kid gets it, and Jenny Carigno, the current chief of defense staff, doesn't get that. Right? She even said in January, in response to Trump and Pete Hegseth, all the changes they've made to their military, she said that DEI is here to stay. She doesn't understand how that is received and how that was received to the people, to the men and women that were at that meeting. This was like a teleconference or whatever you want to call it, like a Zoom meeting, obviously over secure means, but people there that were like absolutely disgusted by those comments by her. She is literally making us implode from the inside, weakening our military, and it's not helping women. All right. When I got out, when I got in, equal opportunity does not mean equal outcome. Okay. It needs to be merit based and achieving good, high standards, right? Lowering standards. Why would you do that? Why would anyone go from an amazing, strong military where we were like world renowned actions in so many different world wars and like, et cetera, and domestic, like just, we've become so weak in so many different ways. And again, I've talked about this for years, but like, again, this DEI woke stuff, I was starting to get more judged at the end of my career, despite the fact that I was, again, the first female Patricia officer in the history of the regiment. That was hard. The phase training was hard. The training was hard. Pre-deployment training, operations, all of that stuff, very difficult, right? But I can't be a liability. It was a strong army, especially the Patricias. I could talk on behalf of them, but very fit elite unit. I think like the best friggin' regiment in the world. But again, obviously I'm biased. The men that I operated with were just incredible men. And a lot of them, like the officers, they are working within our special forces as well. A lot of Patricias, officers and NCO, sorry. And, at the highest friggin' levels. And we're just falling. And anyways, I'm going on a rant, but that's exactly what she's doing. And a child gets this, but Jenny Carigno, right, who allegedly, and this is from multiple different sources that told me this, that she tried to flee Iraq when she was there in some kind of a staff position because there was a rocket attack that apparently she was like definitely safe from. And then it took an American officer to take her off the plane. And so again, she hasn't addressed that, at least not in my knowledge. And again, there are multiple senior level people that have told me this. Senior level people. I'm talking about people that are like Master Warrant Officer, Chief Warrant Officer, and Colonel types, right? And people that have seen battle. And anyways, and even when I was overseas too, there were rocket attacks. Even when I was in Kandahar Airfield, there just like to go on my HLTA, and I would have never even dreamed. I was on a phone conversation with my family, and I didn't even let them know what was happening. Like the sirens were going off and stuff like that, and I was in a C-CAN talking to them, and I literally was calm as I could be. I'm just like, oh yeah, I just I gotta let you go, and then click, and then obviously get my stuff on and like go on. Anyways, but. And then creating a citation, and I share the CAN 4 gen, but creating a citation where like number one on the list for criteria for it is DEI. What the hell are we doing, right? So this woman needs to be forced to resign, right? And she was also part of like the op honor bullshit that was headhunting and lying about people, ruining people's careers and families over anyway.
Race you come from, everybody should get equal the same.
I held a bake sale. A racist bake sale.
We have different.
I held a bake sale.
And then there's a gentleman over.
So this is what I was talking about. So, from out of the UK.
And then there's a gentleman over the back there waving his black cap. Okay, thank you.
Hi, my name's Wesley Russell. It's very telling that a lot of the conversation tonight seems to be around the hotel. But let's not beat around the bush, okay? Everybody, I think, can agree with me that the biggest concern is everybody's welfare and safety. Now, don't take us for fools when you say that these people are refugees. We know they are illegal migrants. If these people were refugees, what are they fleeing from? It's very telling that we're never told what they are fleeing from. What wars are they fleeing from? What countries are they coming from? What are they fleeing? What persecution? We don't know. So we know.
A lot of people are coming in with criminal records or avoiding persecution for crimes they committed that they're trying to, again, avoid being prosecuted for in their countries of origin. This is confirmed. I'm talking about people that have even committed war crimes and crimes against humanity, etc. Like that were high-ranking people within like certain like government like positions, etc. from their countries trying to avoid and flee persecution. I mean, in the courts, obviously, but anyway. But yeah, so people with multiple criminal records.
No, that they're by definition illegal immigrants.
Again, it's not. It's a minority of people coming in, but again, like this needs to be addressed, and a lot less people need to be coming in, and it's people that are actually fleeing atrocities, not overdevelopment or fleeing persecution, and or coming here for money, because people are using this as a grift too. All the social benefits that people are getting when they come here for themselves, for their families, and again, this is all for this liberal government to get more votes. They don't care if they're destroying Canada and people that have shares and stocks in housing development, like throughout Canada, like David Eby, etc. Like these people have everything to gain, and they're not living in the areas where they're going to be impacted by the crimes. Doug Ford he had his house almost broken into, but guess what? He has a lot of money. This grifter, corrupted individual who's called out in government, and he had security. Must be nice. Must be nice.
Which technically makes them criminals, and they should be treated as such. They shouldn't be put up in 5-star hotels. They should be in cells, and they should be told they are not leaving until they pay for their ticket back. So my question to you is, not where are you going to shift them to in a year's time, how are you going to remove them from the country? And don't give me an excuse that, there's the UN refugee document that we signed, or This is the European Court of Human Rights. We voted for Brexit. This is supposed to be a sovereign country. You could easily withdraw from any of those agreements, but you don't. Your party has failed time and time again. In 2010, David Cameron said he was going to get immigration down. How did that work out? We've got higher levels than Tony Blair, and it was his intention to flood this country with migrants on purpose. These people, not all of them, but some of them are going to go on to commit egregious crimes, rape, theft, murder, and there was a reason why the other day there was that ruckus in Kirkby, and we all know why it was, because a migrant was harassing a young girl. That is going to happen in Dunstable. It's going to happen in every single part of the country. You need to stop this now, or you're going to have a serious problem on your hands. Thank you.
And then there's a gentleman over the back there waving his black cap. Okay, thank you.
Hi.
And then
The survivor said.
Okay, this is regarding Trump and the Epstein list. And this is Thomas Massey, if you don't know who it is.
The survivor said that they had decided to compile their own list. But the reality is, if they try to release that list, they're going to be sued into homelessness. They will be attacked. They will have death threats. And so what my colleague Marjorie Taylor Greene volunteered to do, and I've volunteered to do as well, is to read that list on the floor of the House of Representatives, because our founders put into the Constitution speech or debate immunity, which says that we can't be prosecuted for what we say on the floor of the House. So we're willing to help those survivors get those names out there. The survivors said that they had decided to compile their own list, but the reality is, if they try.
So that's a good idea. So if they read the list on the floor again, I'll read it.
The survivors said that they had decided.
What do you mean by this is a reversal?
So this is where he's talking about the vote.
What do you mean by this is a reversal? I mean, after months of fighting.
Well, the Speaker, the Attorney General, the FBI Director, the President, and the Vice President could save us all this time and embarrassment, frankly, for our own party, if they'd just done the right thing 4 months ago.
Do you believe him, Congressman? I mean, for weeks he's been pushing against this. Now he said he supports it. Do you buy it?
He's only supporting it because the President told him to support it.
No,
that's what Mike Johnson does.
No, I'm talking about do you buy President Trump saying that he wants the House to pass this resolution?
Well, I'm concerned that now he's opening a flurry of investigations, and I believe they may be trying to use those investigations as a predicate for not releasing the files. And that's my concern.
You think they'll try to block it?
Well, they will. I'm afraid they're going to try to use a provision of the law that allows you not to release these materials if they're subject of an ongoing investigation would harm, and the release of which would harm the ongoing investigation.
So what do you think?
It's pretty simple.
That's the modus operandi with people within government and then legal friggin' teams that do this. Why? Right? They just they keep things held up in courts, even with Thomas Crooks, etc. Like their excuses for why a lot of information can't come out is because it's still in the courts. He's obviously dead, but there are people or organizations that are suing the government for information, and that's the lawsuits they're talking about. And so, anyway.
For 4 months, he thought the best thing for him was to keep the files secret, and somebody convinced him that the best thing for him was to release the files. And if they're serious about it, they should release them right now. It's that simple.
Will people like Susie Wiles allow him to?
Why do you think he is working so hard not to get them released for so many months? What do you think the real reason is?
These files implicate billionaires and friends of his and political donors that he's trying to protect. And Epstein also had close ties to our own intelligence agencies and Israel's intelligence agencies. That's why there's so much effort in trying to stop this. And I do believe they'll try to stop it. So
Celebrities, politicians, athletes, billionaires.
And that's going to backfire on them too.
Philanthropists.
What do you mean by this is a reversal? I mean,
not the ones that Jasmine Crockett named. There was a different, a Dr. Epstein, where there was like financial interactions. And so, anyway.
Premier Eby obviously.
So Premier Eby, again, he gets on to CTV friggin' Rosemary Barton's ridiculous show on the CTV yeah, in Ottawa, and he was talking with Cochrane or whatever his name is. I hate that guy too. He's such an idiot, such a moron. And I know this sounds like really intense, but I'm sorry, but it's been like it's out of frustration now that things are getting worse, not better, and it's just it's kind of hard to watch sometimes. But yeah, so Evie was on there lying again, and so misinformed. And I don't know if it's like intentional or not, but he is like so far removed from reality. And so many people within government, to be honest with you, that are working within the House of Commons. And so this was her response to Evie. And will CTV air this? Probably not. And if they do, it'll be, at the bottom. Other things broadcast before this.
Premier Eby obviously is really ramping up his criticism of your pipeline proposal, calling it fantasy. So how are you going to deal with the politics of that, given that you feel so strongly against this idea?
Well, I think Premier Eby's comments are un-Canadian and they're unconstitutional. I think that the Supreme Court has determined that the reason we have a country and have given trade and commerce power and control over ports and interprovincial infrastructure to the federal government is for exactly this reason, so that a parochial premier isn't able to block nation-building projects. So I think that the courts have been pretty clear on that. And I would hope that Prime Minister Mark Carney would realize it's his obligation to make sure that these kinds of projects get built. When you look at the value of bitumen, we believe that this project, if we could build it at 1 million barrels a day, even at today's prices, that would generate $20 billion a year for the Canadian economy, of which the governments take about 40%, and it's about half that goes to the federal government and half that goes to the provincial government. So that is a very high value, long-term return. Yeah. That all it takes is the price.
He's talking about pennies in the bucket developments and projects that have been ongoing for years now that they want to focus on, and potash and things like that. But I'm sorry, buddy, but this is going to help you guys a lot, your people. Maybe it's not, based off of like the shares and stocks that you have increasing, but it's better for Canada. So this is for the federal government to decide on behalf of Canadians. This is a good move, and Danielle Smith again called this out so well.
Prime Minister to say yes, and so I'm hopeful that we'll be able to get to that by mid-November.
Premier Eby obviously is really ramping up his criticism of your pipeline proposal, calling it fantasy. Premier Eby obviously.
Hey, what?
I was saying, did you hear about what's going on with the Department of Education?
Oh, you're talking. Hey, what?
I was saying, did you hear about what's going on with the Department of Education?
Oh, you're talking about how the Secretary of Education has been accused of being an accomplice in a cover-up of an interstate child abuse ring that has nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein?
What?
Oh, yeah, no, there's a second child abuse ring accusation that's been floating out here against this White House and this current cabinet, but it has absolutely nothing to do with an island. It has everything to do with the Secretary of Education, her husband, and the company that she ran, where they used kids, many of them unhoused, as child labor, and then those kids were then abused very terribly by men who worked very closely with her and her husband, many of which were actually inside her inner circle. And then as this information came out, she and her husband, using their company's wealth, would then try to pressure these kids and local media to make sure none of this was ever covered. Because also it was like the 80s and the 90s, so everyone was like, oh, that's kind of crazy. And there's tapes about this and all this other different stuff. In fact, there was even a documentary that was released on Netflix about it last year because it's called the Ring Boy Scandal.
Wait, Matt Gaetz is not the head of the Department of Education.
No. Matt Gaetz is not the Secretary of Education. No, yeah. But he has been accused of doing something very similar, about taking an unhoused teenager across state lines and then paying them and then abusing them. Mm-hmm. That's a completely different person. They wanted him to be the Attorney General originally.
Okay.
But he didn't get the job. Uh-huh. Okay. But the Secretary of Education we currently have right now, Linda McMahon, she did get the job. And most people found out about this in the documentary about her husband, Vince McMahon. Uh-huh. And the company that they have is the WWE, which is now called TKO, which is currently being sued in the state of Maryland because Maryland doesn't have a, statute of limitations. Uh-huh. So there's no time out on being abused as a child there.
Yeah, okay, great.
Yeah. Because, this is all stuff that everyone knows that's happened, but nobody ever seems to cover.
This wasn't what I was talking about.
What were you talking about?
I was talking about how they're changing like the way that we characterize certain jobs when it comes to student loans and all this other stuff. And
oh no, you're talking about how they were taking the way that anyone who has a title that is a mandatory reporter for the abuse of children are no longer being considered professional. That's what you're talking about. Yeah, I'm sure that has nothing to do with anything. And also it's weird again that this has absolutely nothing to do with Jeffrey Epstein. It's just a totally separate child abuse scandal that happens to deal directly with the person who's in charge of America's children. Wait, what?
There are so many different rings.
Wait, what?
I was
child
saying,
abuse rings. All
Agreed with the following statement.
Oh, Karina Gould.
Agreed.
Member of Parliament, not even Canadian, and did a terrible job, has done a terrible job, a sellout to Canadians, especially since COVID. I just can't even believe that she's still, actually I can, still working in, yeah, because she's an accomplice. And they're gonna keep on trying to stay in government because they know that as soon as they lose power, they're gonna get investigated finally. Hopefully some will go to jail because they deserve it. They threw innocent Canadians in jail for being whistleblowers, or destroyed their lives, or put them in the courts for years, burying them in debt. Yeah.
Agreed with the following statement. Please tell me if you still agree. Brookfield has been, over the last 5 years, one of Canada's most notorious and largest tax avoiders. Is that still your belief?
That is still my belief, yes.
Okay. And would I also be accurate in saying that from 2021 to 2024, there were about $23 billion in USD profits reported, but Brookfield only paid $2 billion with an effective rate of about 8%. And but if that money was reported in Canada, there'd be a 26% tax rate. Is that correct?
Yes, I mean, there are legitimate reasons why companies pay less than the statutory rate, but in the case of Brookfield, this is a pattern over a long period of time, which strongly suggests very aggressive tax avoidance, and the use of tax havens, Bermuda, particularly by Brookfield, is very clear and apparent.
Thank you. And in 2020, Prime Minister Mark Carney became co-chair of the Bermuda Registered Fund for Brookfield. From 2020 on, do you have any evidence that Mr. Carney attempted to reduce the excessive use of tax havens?
I have no evidence that Brookfield or Mr. Carney attempted to reduce the use of tax havens and the tax haven usage by Brookfield.
And they moved Brookfield to New York because they were avoiding taxes, less taxes in New York than in Canada. How is that not tax avoidance? Like, that's the epitome of tax avoidance too. Right in our faces as well.
Brookfield has continued wholeheartedly, and that has impacted tax payments by Brookfield-owned or controlled companies, both in Canada and in countries all around the world. I mean, I can give you numerous examples from Australia and many examples from Brazil and across Latin America where that's been the case.
Thank you. And I come from a rural riding, so I have to excuse this country analogy. But we would say in this situation, it looks a lot like the fox is actually guarding the hen house here, in that we have an individual who presided over the usage of tax havens in an extraordinarily large amount. And now even he still holds shares, or one would believe that he still holds shares in a blind trust of Brookfield, where he actually stands to make money if we continue to use tax havens. So with that in mind, have you seen any serious or significant efforts made by the federal government since Prime Minister Carney became elected as Prime Minister to combat the use of tax havens?
No, I have not. And I will say that it was a really backward step for the G7 when it met in Canada to exempt U.S. multinationals from the OECD's Pillar 2 minimum tax, which was deeply flawed, but a small positive step in the right direction.
Agreed with the following statement. Please tell me if you still agree. Brookfield has been over the last...
Okay, and just on that there's so many projects, international projects, where Brookfield or other companies that Carney and a lot of guys, again, working within the government, unfortunately, right now, and somehow elected officials too. I just can't even believe it. But they like these investments are like they do have investments in these companies that were again, even with Ukraine, right? You've got BlackRock, you've got Lockheed Martin, you've got my goodness, I'm losing it here. Brookfield, et cetera, that are involved in these contracts being awarded internationally for a lot of what we're calling humanitarian aid, even. And yeah, it's unfortunate that CSIS should be investigating this. They should be investigating Carney. So should Global Affairs. And I did want to say another thing as well, because people are talking about Carney and just how amazing he was when he was the governor of the Bank of Canada. And but again, there are things that happen financially that it does take a few years in order to create the impact, right? You got to look at short, medium, and long term financial ramifications for things that you have done. And he hollowed out the middle class. There were so many things that he did during his tenure, even when he was working in the UK, where the former prime minister said that he did a terrible job. Okay. Because of the long-term ramifications of things that were implemented when he was the governor of the Bank of London as well. And but you had Stephen Harper, who, in my opinion, was one of the best prime ministers that Canada had, and he again, he was a conservative, and he was very conservative in his policies, etc. And he didn't go bold on things, which was a smart thing to do. He hired a team of economists. I've said this for years now as well, but he hired, it was like, I don't, quote me if I'm wrong, but it was a huge team. It was anywhere between 10 and 30 economists to get us out of the international recession during that period of time. Okay, that was a lot of money that was put in to these people. Well spent, but that it made it where we got out of this recession way better, and throughout it as well than most countries. And then you had Jim Flaherty as the finance minister, who was a really good finance minister. And so for people to just put it on one person that was just the governor of the Bank of Canada, they're not looking at the finance minister. What again, they have to coordinate with them, and the prime minister and these team of economists that were put in place. For people to just put it on one person is absolutely ridiculous to me. And if you were going to put it on one person, it should be Harper or Jim Flaherty or the team of economists. I don't know, but
agree with the following statement.
Well, a prime minister who describes himself as a European is giving $500 million to the European Space Agency to create good jobs in Europe. And it gets worse, because the Harwell Science and Innovation Campus, where the European Space Agency will be is located in the UK, is 50% owned by
Must be funny in the rich man's world.
And we didn't land on the moon.
Rather than focusing on
so these space agencies and stuff like that, like if you're not going to address the fact that the moon landings were faked, etc., and actually talk about the constellations and the luminaries, but based off of facts and reality, then it's a waste of money. We Canadians need this money. I don't know. Anyway, these grifters. Sorry, I'm talking. It's frozen.
lining the pockets of Brookfield and not ripping off Canadian workers. Why don't they invest in Canada?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Industry.
Mr. Speaker, it's unfortunate the other side doesn't recognize the key role that space investments play in our country and our national innovation, especially in the US. Critical year for space for Canada.
So, yeah, this was a tweet. Is this my last one? I'll share that. So JD Vance just tweeted this morning, and it's kind of embarrassing to Canada, but it's true. And I don't agree with a bunch of stuff that JD Vance is possibly connected to for Agenda 2030 or whatever, with Palantir and things like that. But he's right here. So while I'm sure the causes are complicated, no nation has learned more. Sorry, the sun is just so. Just 1 second here. There we go. Well, I'm sure the causes are complicated. No nation has leaned more into diversity as our strength. We don't need a melting pot. We have a salad bowl. Immigration insanity than Canada. Saying that no nation has leaned more into it. We're our chief of defense staff in the military is pushing this full speed ahead. Okay, it has the highest foreign-born share of the population in the entire G7, and its living standards have stagnated. So what happened in Canada will be studied by many historians and economists as the prime example of self-destruction of an otherwise prosperous nation after blindly following leftist ideologies. And then it shows a graph that I reposted, and it's just not wrong. And stats, objective data is there. All right. So there's something I wanted to address to you, because Sean Fraser, again, this is another radical leftist. And so this is what he was saying about protecting trans kids. But again, if you want to protect trans kids, you need to protect kids, and again, stop this insanity with allowing them to be sterilized with hormone blockers, or hormone therapy treatments, and all the other surgeries that we're performing. That's how you protect the kids, and stop with the propaganda in the education systems and within the friggin' government, Sean Fraser. So this is his friggin' comment. Again, he's such a beta leftist radical moron, not living in reality. I know it's harsh what I'm saying, but I'm just frustrated. Anyway, so reaching for the notwithstanding clause on issues affecting kids should concern all of us. Trans kids are kids, and they deserve safety, compassion, and the freedom to be themselves. And with tariffs looming and families under pressure, our focus should be on helping people. So again, of course, he has to throw in this is again trying to throw Trump under the bus or the conservatives under the bus, make it seem like all of the stuff that we're going through right now is because of tariffs. Bullshit. Not the case. And so this is what I mean. I like David Creighton, and I would like to go on his show. I have messaged him before, but he hasn't responded back, and he probably gets a lot of messages. But anyway, so his comment, again, I'm just going to address it because I like him, and I just hope that he gets this, and we can talk about it on our podcast if he wants. But he said, do some research on what the UK has done. The Tavistock Clinic has closed, and New Zealand has the same law as Alberta. Wakey, sterilizing children is immoral, unethical. And then, so he was right up to there. And then he says, at the Nazi level and illegal. And so with the Nazi thing, again, why are we pushing that? So my comment to him was, Magnus Hirschfeld established the first trans clinic in Germany in 1919. And he was a radical socialist with significant support from communist organizations, with media, with financial backing, with government support, etc., from communists, from actual. So, and again, he was a radical socialist. I would argue more of a communist as well. And so anyways, his clinic, though, was destroyed in 1933. I've talked about this for years, but by the Nazis. So extreme left, extreme right. But so it's not Nazi level transitioning or whatever you want to call it. That's communist level, socialist level. I wish people would be we need to unpack this more. I would love to do a podcast with him. And anyway, now on to CSIS. Finally. And I did a video early on this morning just because I was so in my head. I was up at 2 a.m. doing more research, and then there was some stuff about JFK that came out, and just reconfirming stuff that I've shared over the past few years regarding the JFK assassination and who was involved in it, who was involved in the cover-up, who had a lot to gain from this, and then the Warren Report, just how misleading it was because of people like Alan Dulles, etc., and Herbert Hoover, actual traitors to the U.S. And the world changed. Where the fuck is this video? Sorry. That's not it. No. There we go. Okay, sorry for that. Okay. Oh, yeah, and JD Vance, again, it was this morning at 6:35 or something like that, 6 a.m. that he posted that regarding Canada. And, yeah. So CSIS Director Dan Rogers lies endlessly, attempting to cover up the crimes of his organization. So again, I have even coins from CSIS from when I did work with them when I was in the Special Forces and the RCMP, etc. There are incredible people that have worked within these organizations, but they are not being trusted anymore because when it matters the most, they are lying to us and supporting a narrative that we know to be bullshit that's being propagated by criminals within the highest levels of government.
So we've had an interesting turn of events as of November 13th,
2025.
And I haven't seen this yet.
It seems that CSIS director Daniel Rogers, who I've spoken of in numerous videos, as being involved in orchestrating many of these criminal harassment campaigns against law.
Oh, wait. Actually, I'm going to show something because I have to. I have to. Canadian cartel. Remember, it took the U.S. to take him down. Finally. And so this is the Office of Public Affairs from the U.S. Justice.gov. So 10 arrested in federal indictment charging Olympic athlete turned cocaine trafficker with ordering murder of witness in January. And I said that I wanted to talk to Sam Cooper about this, and because I had and still have information that that would have absolutely assisted law enforcement and CSIS and et cetera, willingly offered this this information to work with them on behalf of Canada. But I won't do it without protection because of stuff that I've dabbled into before. There was just a little bit too much for me. And but again, with the people involved and where they're operating out of, and so, but no, they want to focus more on alleged hate speech crimes that are being perpetuated by people that are not the victims, they're the actual villains, even doing graffiti themselves on businesses and stuff like that. And anyway, where it's going with this, but yeah, so we have law enforcement that are focused on protecting people as they murder ostriches, but we don't have them that are invested in actually going to whistleblowers and actually getting people like this arrested so that we don't get embarrassed on the international scale. Okay, where it had to be the U.S. that got this guy. And it's not over yet, by the way, either. And that's all I'll say about that. But again, unless I'm protected, I'm saying shit online. And because this is not the hill I'm willing to die on, obviously. That there's a few that I am, but this is not one of them. So Ryan James Wedding, 44, a Canadian national residing in Mexico. The case's lead defendant is charged with overseeing the operations of a criminal enterprise, including by engaging in witness intimidation tactics such as murder and enriching himself with the enterprise's laundered drug proceeds. We're talking tons of cocaine and stuff like that as well. So the following defendants were arrested this Tuesday, as part of the second phase of a law enforcement action entitled Operation Giant Slalom. Oh, that's funny. He was a snowboarder. So anyways, Deepak Balwant Paradkar, 62, of Thornhill, Ontario, Canada. Atna Ona, 40, of Laval, Quebec, Canada. Oh my God, I'm from Laval. It's crazy. Atna Ona. Anyways, so Gursawak Singh Bal, 31, of Mississauga, Ontario. Alistair Chapman, 33, of Calgary, Alberta. Ahmad Nabil Zatoun, 35, of Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. Carmen Yelenet Veloyas Flores, 47, of Bogota, Colombia. Yeah, makes sense. Yulieth Catherine Tejada, 36, of Orlando, Florida, who is legal permanent resident from Colombia. Edwin. So a lot of people that are not actually born Canadian, respectfully speaking, on this list as well. But the ringleader, Wilson Riascos, 45, of Cali, Colombia, and Roland Sokolovsky, 37, of Toronto. Okay, so whether you're a kingpin or a dealer on the street, anyone who sells drugs to our kids will be arrested and prosecuted, said Attorney General Pam Bondi. Yeah. No, but Canada, we allow safe, what do you call that? Safe zones, or whatever you want to call it. Safe dispensaries. Safe supply dispensaries, is that what it's called? Where we're allowing people of all ages, because this is unchecked, unsupervised. But we have these places where in Canada people can actually get drugs. They can actually get drugs, and the materials needed to get high, like the needles and stuff like that, and then allow them to be in what they call safe zones where they can go inside and get high, like in buildings and things like that. And so it's and even Pierre Poilievre, I believe, he even tested that out. He obviously didn't take the drugs, but he was showing just how easy it is with these safe supply areas to get drugs, right? And so this is very dangerous. So, and as someone that worked with 360 Secure for a few years, contracted and to assist with multiple different contracts they were doing, I said that I was working with the LCBO. So I was training the guards for the entire province of Ontario, and some areas were very very sketchy to begin with. And we had it mapped out again. Like I obviously can't share this information online, but like just like the stats, like based on like the days and the times and et cetera of like just like and of incidents that were happening in like the different LCBOs throughout Ontario, and tracking it for trends and things like that, and where we'd have to possibly have to like augment the security forces or details within certain areas just because they're being overrun. And again, it was through the roof. It was just so crazy that even myself, like, yeah, I acted as a private investigator. And I was parking sometimes for 12, 16 hours at a time, like outside of different liquor stores where I knew that there was like organized crime going on, where they knew that there was a limit that they could reach. Or actually, it became a free for all essentially, because we weren't allowed to detain people if they had stolen anything under a certain value, and they were not allowed to have like any form of defense on their belts. In some areas as well, where there were people that were detained that were wanted for murder and things like that, right? And so, and these people have been absolutely disempowered. And that's another reason why I think that we need to relook at the way we train our guards. You see what happened in Toronto during COVID. It's absolutely disgusting. And those people had the charges dropped shortly thereafter. So they didn't have to go through years in the court systems because of murdering someone. Again, they were punching this woman repeat. Anyways, I don't want to get too much into it anymore. I showed the video, but very traumatic. And literally got away with murder. It was absolutely disgusting. And literally in the province I'm living in now. Where was it going with this? But yeah, so cops are not focused on the right things, respectfully speaking. You're going to go after ostriches or people not wearing masks properly, but like you're not going to go after the drug dealer. Anyways, so that's on right. Like I know people probably know a lot more about him than most people that watch my channel, and so I won't make this any longer than it needs to be. And so yes, he's a structure. All right.
Law-abiding Canadian citizens for Orwellian thought crimes, or for the horrendous crime of speaking out against police corruption or police and RCMP involvement in drug trafficking. That individual has all of a sudden be involved in a whole bunch of press conferences, and it seems that he was sent out to do some sort of a public image campaign. And the timing couldn't be more interesting, could it? Because this occurs just no more than 6 days after I mentioned in a recent video the things that this individual has been involved in, spoke about that, and spoke about how he more or less hides in the shadows and keeps himself completely free of any accountability for his actions. So in order to do some damage control on that and to attempt to deceive the public into thinking that this criminal is somehow doing things in the best interest of Canadians, they've trotted him out onto the world stage for a bunch of press conferences, and he gets asked a bunch of questions which he was obviously told about in advance so that he would know how to answer them. A bunch of softball questions from the controlled propaganda networks such as the CBC, CTV News, who routinely lie to you about literally everything. So they've trotted Dan Rogers out there. And if you think it's a coincidence that they're just trotting him out there after I spoke about what he's been involved in that recent video, you're a bit naive. Just looking at the fact that my videos receive low view counts, don't be fooled by that. YouTube lies about the view counts all the time, and they suppress anyone real who exposes corruption while promoting actors such as those Freemason auditors who they promote all the time, staging fake interactions with the police and intentionally acting in crazy and unbalanced manners so as to discredit people who really expose police corruption. Again, I have a strong suspicion that CSIS and Dan Rogers also play a close role in that deception as well, with planning a lot of these staged videos where people are sent out, many of them drug addicts, to pretend to expose police corruption while acting like total fools and while going out to provoke altercations just so they seem like total idiots, to discredit anyone who speaks the truth about the realities regarding police corruption in Canada. So the timing couldn't be more perfect, could it, for Dan Rogers? I guess it's just a coincidence that they set up all these press conferences to try and, do some damage control for his public image. Also because of the fact that I spoke the truth in saying that he does completely hide in the shadows, and he is completely insulated from any accountability for his actions, while his organization routinely breaks Canadian laws and criminally harasses law-abiding citizens whom he has wrongly, falsely declared domestic terrorists simply for the crimes of speaking the truth or having opinions which differ slightly from the controlled media narratives that you must accept if you are part of the Canadian communitarian system. So we'll go through a little bit of the footage here. And again, we have to start this off by saying what we say whenever one of these Freemason psychopaths is trotted out onto the world stage to recite a script that they've memorized. What we have to understand is these people speak through lies and inversion. So they will invert the truth and basically speak in reverse in terms of everything is an inversion and a lie and deceit, exaggeration. They may mix in a few fragments of truth only for the purposes of emotional exploitation. So the plan that they've used here with this is to use the usual emotional exploitation to try and deceive people into thinking that they're doing a good thing. And of course, to do that, they talk about children in the video, because immediately if you talk about things like, as what Daniel Rogers is going to talk about here, claiming that children are somehow being radicalized online, so he claims, instantaneously they're going to use that as emotional deceit, emotional exploitation to try to get you on their side simply because they're talking about children and trying to portray it as if they themselves are looking out for children, when in reality what they're doing now, as per these things they're putting out.
Respectfully speaking, who do you think would be more radicalized? I gave the example of what my grandmother would consider to be more radicalized if she saw it. And God bless her, rest in peace, etc. She was a lovely woman. She was a nun who fell in love with my grandfather, only was with him her entire life. 4 kids, etc. Just such a giving, loving soul. Went to church all the time. But who would you consider to be more radical? Someone wearing just casual clothing, where like more conservatively dressed with a cross, or which is considered right wing now, or extreme right wing, or radicalized, or someone who was like 300 pounds, shaved head, purple hair, rainbow color hair, wearing furry costumes and or fetish wear, or walking around pride parades naked, right, with just your shoes on, etc. Like, what's more radical? Okay, is it coming from the left or is it coming from the right? Respectfully speaking, just based off perception alone. And with the friggin' nose rings and the face tattoos and the BDSM stuff. Like, come on, guys, come on. A guy got attacked at a Turning Point USA debate because of wearing a cross. There's probably more to it than that. I know that he was saying like Christ is King, etc. But again, it was at a Turning Point USA event. What do you expect? Anyway, but I mean, it doesn't excuse, like, this guy was like attacked viciously, absolutely disgusting.
Is it seems that they are actually monitoring children as well, and what they're looking at online to make sure that they stay focused on state-funded material, and anyone who starts to look into the truth and deviate from the state-funded lies of the CBC and CFTO News and these other state-controlled propaganda networks, well, Dan Rogers has to then assume that they are being radicalized simply for being able to think. And of course, he'll make up a bunch of lies, and his organization will stage a bunch of fake skits using the fake witnesses and actors who they use also to go around slandering people and lying about good, honest people who report police corruption and police involvement in drug trafficking. He'll use those same people to set up a bunch of skits, which will be also coordinated with the media, where they'll say there's a whole bunch of radicalization going on, and we have to do this to protect you from this quote-unquote radicalization. And they will make all of that up, stage these skits, and then say, well, we're justified in doing what we're doing because of this. We're justified in monitoring people inside their own homes, completely removing all of their privacy, just due to some arbitrary things that we make up about them to justify that. So we'll go on here and listen to some of what Mr. Rogers has to say here. And again, I'd like to reiterate, it's important to note that this man has not made any major public appearances prior to this. And his first major public appearances and these press conferences come less than a week after I spoke about the things that he was involved in that video. So if you think it's coincidental, you should also look at the fact that many of these same Canadian propaganda networks, after my discussing in my videos the clear and obvious involvement of the police, CSIS, and the RCMP in facilitating the distribution of hard drugs throughout Canada, immediately a bunch of fake stories come out claiming that police have busted all these drug dealers. It's all just damage control. And this is also damage control, trotting this Freemason psychopath out to recite this script of lies, which he's memorized, and to go through these generic talking points to try and deceive people into thinking that his organization, which works to criminally harass law-abiding citizens throughout his country, who have done nothing more than spoke the truth or expose corruption, is somehow doing a good thing. He has to deceive you into doing this. And so they will use the usual emotional manipulation where they bring children into it. They have to exploit children and bring them into it and lie to you about that to try to get you on his side and to support the crimes that he's committing and covering up behind this veil of false security for the country.
Distinguished guests, members of the press, and fellow Canadians, thank you for joining me today and allowing me to provide you with an update on the security challenges facing Canada. Invités d'honneur, membres de la presse, concitoyennes et concitoyens canadiens, merci d'être ici aujourd'hui et de me donner l'occasion de parler des défis auxquels fait face le Canada en matière de sécurité. It's my first time addressing Canadians as the director of CSIS, and I do so at a time when Canada's national security environment is more complex and dynamic than at any point in recent memory. Polarization and radicalization are on the rise, and social cohesion is eroding.
And what would be the cause of that? Now let's just take a look at what really is causing that. Could it be the propaganda that's continually put out, fragmenting people into the two sides of the left and right, which is continually pushed by the intelligence agency controlled media? I mean, I would think that would be part of that. And you're claiming that you want to stop those types of things, yet you yourself and your organization are the ones fully condoning those things, because it's well known that the intelligence agencies have a tremendous amount of influence over the propaganda that is put out by our controlled media organizations. So again, more hypocrisy here. He's talking about a problem that he and his organization are in fact involved in, and telling you that he's trying to solve the problems that they themselves are creating. Hegelian dialectic 101.
So it's interesting to note that Daniel Rogers talks specifically about people trying to cause division and to, as he puts it, as he hints at, interfere with the democratic process in Canada. So just to illustrate a point here, I just want to talk about this picture here briefly. This picture is from one of the recent staged state-sanctioned protests. I believe it was from the anti-immigration protest that they put on, a theatrical performance, more than a protest, but that they put on in Toronto a few weeks back, or maybe a month ago. And I just want to draw your attention to this individual here who's standing there with his arms splayed out that way, in that almost mocking crucifixion pose, which is, again, because these people, in reality, they hate Christianity, but they just assume these fake roles with these Freemasons, playing these controlled opposition roles, and then they present them in all the fake alternative media and also in the mainstream controlled Canadian media, present them as these mouthpieces for each side. So this guy obviously is more for the right side, and then they have their equally controlled Freemason people who they use on the right to set up these fabricated, contrived altercations, which they then use as an excuse to bring in the police and shut down the protest and say, okay, we can't have this anymore because there are all of these violent clashes and these extremists clashing and all this nonsense. But something more here. I want you to look at that individual's right arm. And if you look closely at his right arm, you will see a symbol tattooed on his right arm. And that symbol is that hand, sort of a hand symbol with a large eye in the middle of it. And that symbol is directly associated with the Kabbalah, which is the Jewish Kabbalah and mysticism, which is heavily promoted within Masonic lodges. Okay, so let me just show you a few pictures of that just to show you that it corresponds with what he has tattooed on his arm there. And let's also note that this is one of the people who is, I guess you would say, on the quote unquote right wing side of these staged manufactured protests. So we can see clear connections to Freemasonry and to the Kabbalistic belief system here, which they heavily promulgate within Masonic lodges. Let's take a look at a few images of that symbol as well, just to confirm. And these are just a few images I found doing a brief Google search for the Kabbalistic symbol of the hand and eye, and you can see here the sort of rainbow color around it. Same symbol as the tattoo as he has. And that tree in the middle is the Kabbalistic tree of life, or I believe, is it referred to as the Sephiroth tree? I believe it's might be called that, something along those lines, but it's the tree of life in the middle anyway, as they refer to it there. And then the Kabbalistic symbolism, very much like the tattoo that individual has on his arm. And then a second picture here, you can see the same symbol there with the symbol of the all-seeing eye in the middle, and then, of course, the pyramid symbol in the middle as well. So, of course, these symbols, if you understand many of the most important writers within Freemasonic circles, such as Manly P. Hall, speak about the importance of signs and symbols to Masons and how there is a veneration for these things and how they speak through signs and symbols many times, a lot of times, instead of words. They can communicate through signs and symbols instead of words. So you see the symbol that individual at the protest is clearly showing there on his arm, the Kabbalistic symbol of the hand with the all-seeing eye, also known as the Eye of Horus, in the middle of it. And then
Okay, I totally missed that because I just took the dogs out. So I don't know what he's talking about. I'll circle back.
Just want to show you Exhibit B. And this is another photo from the same protest. And here you will see a picture of one of the leftist protesters. Could be one of those people with that state-funded organization, which they refer to as Antifa. I'm not sure if this guy's a part of that, but he's from more of the leftist side in these theatrical staged protests. And you can see the banner that he's carrying there has kind of a skull and bone symbol, almost like that pirate symbol, that symbol that you'd see associated with pirate ships. And of course, that symbolism is also closely associated with the military. And of course, you can see the symbol of the Order of Skull and Bones, which of course is directly connected to the CIA, because it is well known that many members of the Order of...
Was it Yale? One of the frats, Skull and Bones. It's annually held on the 22nd of March for the official date that they celebrate. And people like Clinton are part of these organizations. And he's confirmed it as well, and other presidents as well. It's a frat group. Again, these are from Ivy League schools where there are people that get part of these occult groups, these frats, whatever you want to call it. So many different variations, again, of the misinterpretation of the creation story. And and so there are people that are part of these Skull and Bones that are good people as well, right? Like the majority of them. And it was just being part of a frat in an Ivy League school. Anyway. But this is where contacts and connections are built, and then people get invited to like the Bohemian Grove or Bilderberg events, et cetera, as contacts and networks that are built within these institutions.
Skull and Bones go on to be members of the CIA. For example, Bush Jr. and Sr., both being members of Skull and Bones. And of course, Bush Sr. going on to be head of the CIA as well. So connections to the intelligence services. And again, we've also spoke about how Freemasons and those within these occult organizations which have direct ties to our intelligence.
And JFK wanted to dismantle the CIA, break them into a million pieces, is what I think the quote was. And so yeah, Bush had also like interest in or everything to gain from him being assassinated. People with the connections to the oil industry as well, and the Bush and the Clintons, man, I can't believe these people are not in jail yet. Just wild to me. Oh my goodness! Even with 9/11, their involvement in that, and these foundations that have been funding. Anyway,
Intelligence
all kinds
services
of trafficking.
speak through signs and symbols. So again, he's just carrying this to let people know, right, that there's associations with this protest and the intelligence agencies. And again, that symbol, of course, closely associated also with the military, where they have that Punisher symbol with the skull. You see a lot of people online, interestingly enough, in the comment sections, also showing either the skull and bone symbol or that Punisher skull symbol. And that's also, it's just utilized, sorry about that, it's just utilized to let people who are in the know understand what this really is, understand that they're controlling it and that it's just a staged state-run protest. And of course, what we're seeing at these protests as well is connections with the state-funded media and with the fake alternative media like Rebel News, where they will
There's some good people in Rebel.
have all these people there who are sent to orchestrate these staged theatrical altercations, right? They'll stage all these fake fights and things like this, and then they'll put it out there. And of course, they've conditioned people to want to see nothing but fights and conflict and mindless nonsense like this online. So they'll put it all out there and it'll get a lot of views. And then they'll also use these staged altercations at these fake protests where the intelligence services control both sides of the protests while pretending to give people the illusion of democracy. And then they'll use it as justification because of all these staged fights and fake altercations that they've set up between their state-funded actors to justify bringing in the police and shutting down the protests and saying, well, look what happened.
Okay, so something that a lot of things I agree with, some things I don't agree with. So it's saying here, the Masonic Order of Skull and Bone symbol beneath the eye of Horus, aka also known as the eye of Lucifer. So Horus, again, if the story is about Isis, Osiris having a son named Horus, Osiris representing the creator or God, and Isis representing she's a moon goddess, and then and Horus represents the sun and the sun's travel path. So there's a diagonal belt, Horus, hour, and Lucifer is Venus, the luminary.
Happens every time we give you people the right to go out and protest. There's all of
it's Saturn that's connected to Satan and the devil and hell and freezing and hellfire, all that stuff. Lucifer, or the morning star or the evening star, Venus, either precedes or proceeds the sun in the sky, depending on the season, because it has its own circular travel path that it travels above us.
This violence and chaos. So we have to shut down your right to protest. So it all falls in perfectly with the plan orchestrated by our intelligence services throughout the Five Eyes countries. And interestingly enough, you can see almost these identical methods being used in all of the Five Eyes countries, with these staged theatrical productions in which Freemasonry and our intelligence services are associated with controlling both sides.
And I don't think that these protesters, these far left protesters, are part of the Skull and Bone. So like, again, I'm like, that's very...
And having these people manufacture this fake orchestrated conflict so as to justify bringing in more and more police, and then having the media organizations say, well, look at what these protesters are doing, violent clashes all the time. Look at what happens when we allow them the right to have free speech and freedom of expression. We have to shut this down. What they're not telling you is the vast majority of the people out there are just people who they send in to orchestrate these manufactured clashes. So the reason I'm showing these pictures is to illustrate my point of how deceitful and dishonest Daniel Rogers is when he talks about people trying to divide and cause conflict and affect the democratic process within the country. Who's really doing that, Daniel? Who's really directly connected to doing that? Yes, I think we know who it is.
Events are unpredictable and competition between states is intensifying. Our global environment emboldens competitors, attempts to interfere and spy, and advancements in technology enable our adversaries while challenging us to adapt. All aspects of national security have risen in urgency and in priority, and the demands on our service are unrelenting, and there is no clear path to it.
And yet you're spending your time terrorizing and criminally harassing me as I attempt to go to my job, sending criminal biker gangs to stalk and harass law-abiding citizens, sending police to follow and stalk people continually everywhere they go, even though they're law-abiding citizens who have done nothing more than speak the truth, which deviates from your criminal compulsive lying narrative of your controlled state-funded propaganda networks. That's what your organization is spending its time doing, despite your lies here.
A simpler future. But while challenged, CSIS has remained strong and able. We have trusted partners in Canada and abroad, and together with them, we've acted decisively to keep Canadians safe. Our intelligence professionals devote themselves to protecting the rights, freedoms, and safety of all in Canada.
And this is all nothing but complete and utter nonsense and lies.
Yeah.
They don't keep people safe.
They literally, again, the reports that have come out, okay, because of access to information requests, okay, like it has been so incredibly incorrect. So no, you don't have the best people, respectfully speaking, working there anymore. You may have when I was still working with you guys, not anymore. From the reports I've seen, from what you guys are saying, it's you couldn't be further from the friggin' truth in a lot of cases.
At all, they terrorize and criminally harass law-abiding Canadians simply for the crimes of being able to think outside the box. People who may question some of the totalitarian things that are being pushed, people who questioned things during the COVID situation. It is well known that many of the people who weren't actually controlled, and part of that entire psychological operation of the trucker convoy, which they set up as a honey trap operation so that they could try and draw out some of the real people who opposed these tyrannical measures. The real people who weren't those state-funded actors who they sent out to flood the streets were put on watch lists to be harassed, criminally stalked, and terrorized.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about the reasons why.
Even government entities, and this is not out of my mouth. Like, so this has already been like disclosed publicly. So I don't want to share too much on this, but surveillance in the sky that was tracking anyone's phone that was part of the Freedom Convoy, and then people being put on list based on their IP addresses from their phones. Anyways,
he won't disclose
and then
the actual methods that his organization uses shortly. I think it's pretty obvious why he won't openly disclose that, considering what the methods they utilize actually are.
Even when they aren't aware of it, Canadians benefit greatly from their work.
Now he has to go on to their usual tactic of using staged fake terror events to justify the removal of basic rights and freedoms and creating a surveillance state. He has to do that. They have to always use emotional exploitation and deceit to push through these totalitarian agendas. And that's what it ends up in. That's what the end result is. It's to justify more and more surveillance, to justify having police everywhere, even though they're completely not needed, based upon fabricated events that these criminals have created over the years. And that's been going on for quite some time now. And the lies remain the same, and they stick to the same deceitful playbook every time they trot these actors out here to spew these lies.
Yeah.
I'm going to go through.
And a 15-year-old Edmonton area minor was arrested for terrorism related.
I mean, he is reading off of a script in his. I mean, it's not defensible. Like, he should be, if he wrote that, then he isn't, again, like, oh my God, I just can't with these people anymore. Like, he's so misinformed.
Defense, as RCMP investigators feared they would commit serious violence related to COM764, a transnational violent online network that manipulates children and youth.
Okay. Now, it must be pointed out that most of these online networks are set up by these people, the intelligence agencies, and this is more than likely fabricated, what he's referring to there. I don't know the specifics of that event in great detail, but I do know that they set up many of these online groups just for the purpose of fabricating these
Okay, yeah, that's true.
fake events, which they can then use to attempt to justify more more of a police state, bringing in more of a police state and bringing in more surveillance everywhere. They have to fabricate these events because the things that they're bringing forth just aren't happening. So they use the Hegelian dialectic. They create the problems themselves. They try to push for a reaction from the people who they've deceived. And then when there is a bit of a reaction, they then come in and offer you the predetermined solution, which is always more surveillance, more police everywhere, until it comes to the point where they're having armed military personnel everywhere walking down your streets due to nothing more than mostly fabricated events that they've used to justify this.
Across widely accessible online platforms. And only a few kilometers from
what he says in this regard is to be taken with a grain of salt, based on the irrefutable proof that they have continually, time after time, staged these events to justify bringing in more and more unnecessary security and to create a police state and to create a surveillance state. When you've lied over and over and over again about these things, everything you say has to fall under scrutiny.
Like, what I don't know if he realizes that he is supporting and enabling Carney and the radical liberals within government to keep on exploiting people and targeting more conservative people. Okay, do you not realize what you're doing here? This causes so much division, and it is bullshit that's being propagated by our state.
Late 2023 and early 2024, two 15-year-olds were arrested in Ottawa for allegedly conspiring to conduct a mass casualty attack targeting the Jewish community in Canada's capital.
Did that happen, or was that just fabricated? Again, we have extensive evidence that over and over again, your organization and other intelligence services fabricate these events simply to justify asking for more money to bring in more and more police and to create a military police state and basically to create a surveillance state. And also just to justify what you're doing, which is really, in reality, for the most part, just terrorizing your own citizens, terrorizing people on behalf of private interests for personal reasons, on behalf of the state, and not actually doing anything that you say you do. So naturally, anything that you bring up in this regard has to fall under the utmost scrutiny, since your organization has been known to lie over and over and over again with regards to staging these contrived events in order to justify more and more totalitarianism.
Clearly, radicalized youth can cause the same harms as radicalized adults. But the societal supports for youth may help us catch radicalization early and prevent it.
So he has to what he's getting at here is he has to monitor your children in your own home. They have to have surveillance to monitor your own children in your own home, because you can't just have the parents do that. You can't just have the parents be responsible for what their children are looking at online. No, they have to have people monitoring you and your children in your own home due to fabricated events that they've made up to justify this absurd tyranny.
Nationwide joined the RCMP and our intelligence partners from the United Kingdom, the United States, Australia, and New Zealand.
Okay, so you hear that again, and he's referring to the Five Eyes intelligence services, all of whom are interconnected. So if CSIS has you on a watch list for probably doing something good, like speaking the truth or speaking out against corruption, which is the main reason why they target people in those areas in Canada and all those other countries. If you move to one of those other countries in the Five Eyes intelligence community, such as New Zealand, the UK, United States, Australia, you will be targeted in exactly the same way, because all of these intelligence services are interconnected. And so that is the Five Eyes intelligence service that Rogers is referring to here.
A joint public report in December 2024 highlighting the evolving issue of young people and violent extremism. It provides advice to parents,
most of which is fabricated, I might add,
guardians, and others with information to help them identify early concerns and address youth radicalization before it's too late. Fortunately, only a small number of youth or adults with extreme views resort to violence. But when they do, the consequences are devastating.
But you would have us believe there's a lot more, since so many of these events that are talked about in your controlled propaganda networks, such as the CBC and CTV News, are staged. They are staged and they're absolutely fabricated, and you use actors You use people who are community-based agents who train their children, very sick people who train their children to deceive, lie, spy on their neighbors. You use them to partake in these activities, and you stage fake events with them in coordination with the media. And you put these events out there and try to use these events as justification for your services to enact more tyranny against.
Like even with the Toronto protests that were going on with Bill Blair when he was chief of police in Toronto, and I think it was 2010. And what they did there, that was absolutely criminal, but there were also crisis actors and role players that were involved that Bill Blair would have had to have known about and allowed. And the media was lying yet again.
Its own citizens simply for speaking the truth and being honest and upstanding. Meanwhile, you facilitate and enable criminals to operate freely. You facilitate the drug trade. There's no question about that. We can say for certain that our intelligence services, the RCMP, and local police in Canada are fully involved in that. And I'll tell you exactly why shortly. Anything he says regarding these quote-unquote so-called attacks has to fall under the utmost scrutiny, since his organization, in coordination with the controlled propaganda media news.
The G20 summit. I've talked about this in previous videos, but Bill Blair was the chief of police at the time, and again, that was so sketchy what they did under him, and he was not forced to resign or anything like that. And somehow became our Minister of National Defense and working in cabinet and getting a huge salary. And he has no idea what he's talking about in so many different things. And the Freedom Convoy as well.
News networks in Canada have been proven over and over and over again to be liars who have fabricated these events in order to justify tyrannical agendas to be pushed to suppress the freedoms, the basic rights and freedoms of Canadian citizens who aren't already a part of their communitarian system. And that is a large number of people who they control. And that is why they are so, that is why they can so easily push through these deceitful agendas, because they have all these people who are willing to lie and deceive endless amounts of people who they can use as false witnesses, people who will deceive, people who will partake in these false flags and lie about literally everything, including the exploitation of children, including even going so far as to fake the deaths of children. And of course, these people who they use are well paid for their efforts. So anything he says regarding this has to fall under the category of potential emotional exploitation, which is what these intelligence agencies do to try and deceive you into accepting new tyrannical laws. And it also has to fall under extreme scrutiny,
whether he
since
realizes
these
it or
media
not.
Organizations are identical to the boy who cried wolf, over and over and over again, pushing fabricated events as being real, provably fabricated events as being real, such as just one example being the event at Parliament Hill, where all of these major Canadian news organizations claimed there was a terrorist attack. And during that supposed active shooter event at Parliament Hill, which all of these media organizations reported on, all of these Canadian propaganda networks all reported identical stories on, we can clearly see in CNN's footage of that event, an Ottawa police officer carrying an automatic rifle, looking directly at the media cameras and bursting out laughing, along with another officer who was doing it next to him as well.
Yeah, I've shared that.
Is that
It's
something that
taken
you
out of
would
context,
be doing
though.
if you were actually dealing with an active shooter event?
Yes, they do that.
Obviously not. Not only is there deceit involved, there is mocking deception involved, and they're literally mocking the people who they are attempting to deceive with these things. So these are the things that come into play every time this man talks about these quote-unquote events, which he and his organization have been known to use over and over and over again, as have the other intelligence services in the Five Eyes countries, to justify invoking new tyrannical measures to restrict freedoms.
60 victims injured. Ces résultats tragiques auraient été plus élevés si le SCRS et nos partenaires chargés de l'application publique sur l'ingérence étrangère et le travail de la défense. Also, alongside Public Safety Canada's Counter Foreign Interference Coordinator, we partner with ethnic, religious, and cultural communities. Dialogue with them serves equally to share our information about transnational repression and to help us better understand.
Okay, I'm gonna have to just so Daniel Rogers was appointed director of the Canadian Security Intelligence Service on October 28th, 2024. So it's just been a little over a year. So he wasn't in, he was obviously working within CSIS in order to get that position, but I don't know what level of involvement he had with like COVID, the Freedom Convoy, immigration, the drug cartels, human trafficking, all of that stuff. And so anyways, succeeding David Vigneault, Vigneault, who retired after 7 years in the role. So David Vigneault, this guy should be investigated for being a traitor to Canada. And so a career national security professional with over 2 decades of experience. Yeah, I'm being wrong. Anyways, I mean, probably not wrong throughout his whole career. I'm just being a little salty. But yeah, just how COVID was handled and the war in Russia, Ukraine, just completely misinformed with that. Israel and Palestine completely misinformed with that. But again, they are following leftists and international players, and they don't even realize it. So anyway, maybe this guy could be educated.
Their experiences.
So they're also heavily pushing the blame China narrative, which is a common recurring theme throughout all of these Five Eyes intelligence areas, where they have these people come out and lie and, in coordination with the controlled media, blame everything on China. Blame everything on supposed Chinese interference. Yet again, I come back to a point that I've made over and over again. We have some of the most sophisticated technology available anywhere. And this also ties in with drug trafficking and how all of these narcotics are somehow getting into the country despite the resources available to people like this man and the other organizations who his organization.
Okay, so Daniel Rogers was most recently served as Deputy National Security and Intelligence Advisor, NSIA, to the Prime Minister since May 2023. So again, so he's in positions where he should know better, but also in positions where he's getting told what to say, how to paint narratives. He's getting told, obviously, by the Prime Minister. So Justin Trudeau and now Carney. From 2016 to 2018, he was seconded to the Privy Council office as the Director of Operations within the Security and Intelligence Secretariat, where he held responsibilities for coordinating cabinet business and operational issues relating to national security and intelligence, counterterrorism, and emergency management. So he's been working with cabinet for a long time. Prior to these appointments, Mr. Rogers served as Associate Chief of Communications Security Establishment, CSC, since January 2022. So just around Freedom Convoy time. So, and again, completely wrong on that. Completely failed us on that. He spent the majority of his career with CSE, starting in 2002 as a software developer before moving on to various leadership roles. So he's a software developer. So literally no security, defense, operational, strategic experience at all.
They're closely intertwined with.
Cool.
They have all of this technology, yet somehow
not law enforcement, not military,
being able to occur. I mean, how is that possible? How is it possible that you have technology that allows you to spy on law-abiding citizens in their homes so that you can criminally harass them, but somehow you can't use that same technology to locate people who are dealing drugs, to locate these crime syndicates that are used to run drugs throughout the country? I mean, it's pretty obvious that technology is not being used for what you say it's being used for, but for other more nefarious reasons. Because if you were really using that technology that you have to its full potential, you'd be able to stop all drugs from coming into the country almost effortlessly. Yet over and over, we hear these fabricated stories about how somehow all of these drugs are getting in. And now, if these drugs are getting in with that technology available to you to spy on literally anyone, that could only be happening with complicity of our intelligence services and our law enforcement. There's no other conclusion that can be drawn, despite the endless lies that these controlled propaganda news networks, which I might add, people like this man here literally tell these news networks what to say. Let's not make any mistakes here. They're bringing him out and making it seem like this is something where he's appealing to them. In reality, He's above them. He's a representative of the crown, and the crown will dictate exactly what happens and what is put out on these media organizations. So it is complete and utter nonsense to have these stories put out about all this crime that's going on and all of the drugs that are in the country, and to claim that these people somehow aren't able to stop it. How utterly incompetent would they, CSIS, the RCMP, and law enforcement be with the type of sophisticated technology they have to spy on law-abiding citizens in their home, to not be able to use that technology to deter drugs from being distributed throughout the country and to bust all the drug dealers and get all of the hard drugs out of the country? They could do that in a heartbeat. So we can tell, obviously, the only clear and obvious conclusion is that these people are fully involved in it. They are facilitating it. They are involved in it, and they're involved in the facilitation of these activities. And we can see for sure that they use these controlled propaganda news networks to cover for their crimes and to create fake boogeymen, making up ridiculous lies like saying there's Mexican drug cartels operating in Canada. So if that's the case, it comes back to the more obvious question: how incompetent are the RCMP to have not shut that down
Exactly.
with the type of technology to spy on all of their citizens that the RCMP and CSIS have? It would not be possible. If they were actually doing their jobs, that would all be shut down, and we wouldn't have hard drugs in the country, and we wouldn't have these criminal organizations who are seemingly allowed to freely operate due to police corruption, Freemason police corruption in this country. It would not be happening. So we can tell that these are absolute bold-faced lies that this man, his organization, and his controlled propaganda networks routinely disseminate to deceive people.
And defend Canada's interests whenever it becomes necessary. For example, we've provided Inuit and territorial governments with information that empowers them to take into account national security interests as they make decisions about economic and research opportunities with foreign companies and investors.
Yeah, you've probably given them information to deceive them into stalking their own people as well. I'm sure that's happened as well, because I'm sure there are people within those communities who are awake to your corruption and the crimes that you and the police are involved in committing, and who are awake to the drug trafficking situation. So, of course, you would go to people within their communities and attempt to turn those people against them, which is what you do. You turn people against each other, manipulate people to harass and terrorize otherwise good, fine, and upstanding, honest people. And to do this, you often use criminals and the dregs of society to assist you in these measures, who you allow to freely operate.
If he was actually interested in exposing the people who are involved in causing division and disrupting the democratic process in Canada, as he claims, then Dan Rogers would have CSIS investigating many of the Canadian Masonic lodges who are used to insulate these criminal activities, which are clearly in operation to fragment and destabilize so many of the foundations within the country, including the right to free speech, the right to protest. If people can't go down to a protest and voice their views in a democratic manner, if instead huge amounts of state-funded actors are being sent to control both sides of the protest, which with people who have already purposefully been fragmented into two sides to destabilize and turn the population against each other. And if we can see clear and direct connections to these operations being drawn between Masonic lodges and the corrupt criminal.
This is not I mean, I wouldn't go so far as to blame the Freemasons. Again, there are so many incredible Freemasons out there as well, and that do good work and part of good organizations, etc. So I definitely think there's a deep state international elite ruling class who are pushing these agendas. And I'm talking the billionaire class here, and they're exploiting people, unfortunately. And you've got people that are monopolizing on these deep state contacts or connections, like Carney and Trudeau, et cetera, and they are unfortunately pressuring people within these government organizations into lying to us and misleading us, and however they want to paint it. And so there's a lot of things that are happening, even with this forced immigration. It's not law enforcement's fault that this is happening, right? But they have to manage this, and they don't have the staffing or the infrastructure for it at all, and they're getting radicalized from within because their higher ups, again, they are the ones that are pushing the agenda, the narrative, that's being pushed from the carny types, which is being pushed from the billionaire class, right? And we're not learning. So I'm just looking at my social media, and so in Minnesota, wow. Anyways, but I need to fact check this still, but this is happening in Western countries, and so it doesn't surprise me because this is happening in Canada too. But in Minnesota, Somalians have been accused of falsifying autism diagnosis to obtain state funds, which were redirected from welfare programs to support the terror group Al-Shabaab. And well done, Tim Walz, yet again.
Criminal police who also take part in staging these protests and the fake altercations.
And on that, actually, because I'm talking about funding terrorist organizations, I still think that the Muslim Brotherhood should be classified as a terrorist organization within Canada, or some kind of heightened threat class or category. And because there are people, I'm not saying it's all from the Muslim Brotherhood, there are people within Canada, whether they realize it or not, that are funding terrorist organizations or organizations that operate or also get funding from terrorist organizations like ISIS and Al Qaeda and Boko Haram and you name it. And there are absolutely radical terrorists within Hamas. Again, not all of them. There are people that have government jobs, like educators, finance, et cetera, that have nothing to do with the defense or military, that are also again being genocided. But anyways, even with Hamas, there's like over 400 connections with Canadians. Okay, direct contacts and connections to people that are radicalized within Hamas, within Palestine. And so if you think that there's no like money transfers going on to fund terrorist activities, et cetera, you would be wrong. And we're doing nothing about it, right? Like we got to focus on these things a little bit more. And so, but I mean, again, that's so much to deal with. These crime rings, these organized crime rings that are coming to Canada from so many different countries, even Pakistan and India, et cetera. And yeah, this is the fault of people that were in charge of immigration policies, et cetera, people within cabinet. And there are people that need to go to jail.
At these protests, if clear connections can be made, and yet CSIS completely ignores this and won't have any part of even acknowledging, or let alone acknowledging or investigating any of these things, which can be provably drawn, the connections can be provably drawn to Masonic lodges. What does that say about their legitimacy and credibility as an organization that is really legitimately trying to protect people? I think we can draw the clear conclusion that this is all nothing more than fabrication on his part.
Maybe it's
and clearly he knows that these things have direct connections to Freemasonry, but being a Mason himself, he won't break his oath of silence, and he won't speak to expose any of these things, and we know exactly why that is. Rogers pontificates self-righteously about the supposed challenges facing his organization, while being deceptively evasive about the clear and obvious facts concerning the origins of these manufactured problems, which our own intelligence services and the criminal factions that operate above the law within Canadian police departments and Masonic lodges helped to create. The relentless barrage of lies that this psychopath uses to attempt to conceal the truth, and his willingness to exploit
can't be calling him a psychopath
and manipulate any members of the public, young or old, seem to know no boundaries.
I guess the
For obvious reasons, during this recent array of staged news conferences.
Yeah, so if he's willingly or knowingly lying, not like, let's say not about this, obviously, but he's clearly been misinformed about, again, through COVID and the wars that have been going on internationally, et cetera, and the actual threats to Canada. And yeah, and so and then like putting in reports that have been, again, like fabricated and using like not reputable sources, like to back up claims and allegations. I mean, you know, especially when it comes to like the risk of like death or harm to citizens because of these lies. So clearly being okay with it. Interesting.
Daniel Rogers, the director of CSIS, declines to disclose any information relating to methods that his organization uses against people who they have declared potential domestic terror threats. Here, I will discuss some of the methods that his organization uses based on my own personal experiences as a subject of over 4 years of their criminal harassment, despite being a law-abiding citizen with no criminal record. And for obvious reasons, Daniel Rogers declines to disclose any of the methods that his organization uses when they are dealing with quote-unquote potential domestic terrorists. And the reason for that is because these methods are extreme and are cruel and unusual punishment and would not be accepted by most of the public if they knew that they were utilizing these methods, particularly against people who have committed no crime and who they are just slandering and targeting and creating fabricated.
The timing is suspicious. I'm going to look into this, right? Like I'm watching this video with you. I was looking into the like the cartel Canadian connection in the last few days, like so many other things, and so I didn't get to that yet. And so my apologies for that. But I will say that the timing is suspect, right? Like there's just like a lot of negative news right now, like that's highlighting Israel and Netanyahu and Ben Gvir and Smotrich and these literal criminals, people guilty of war crimes and crimes against humanity, and yeah, and there's a lot more truth that's being exposed. Unfortunately, like it's been only after Charlie Kirk's assassination that people started paying attention to things that he was saying in his final few months, and big contracts that he declined from Netanyahu, offering him $150 million. They were, and Turning Point USA was already pro-Israel, and so he, like Ben Shapiro, like prime example, and so many others. But yes, and so that would have doubled their budget. And he refused, and that was very honorable of him to do. And so just the timing, because Netanyahu and this campaign, like the people are putting billions of dollars into pushing this this agenda to support what Israel's doing internationally, including APEC and ADL, etc. And how there are people that are supporting and enabling genocide to happen. And not at the interest, and not at all in the best interests of Americans or Canadians, all the money that we're sending, but especially the U.S. And I'm going to say again, Canada should be America's strongest ally in so many different ways. And one of the biggest arguments being our resources, our location. Like there's just so much there. Our culture, identity, etc. It's very similar, and yeah, and so. And now again, there seems to be that, like, and now there's this, and it's targeting the Jewish community. It's unfortunate if it's real, and it's disgusting, and it could be some people that are radicalized because of what they're watching go on, and there are people lying about it, right? So Ben Shapiro radicalizes people from the left and right when he lies about what's going on in Israel, right? When he claims there were burned, charred babies and posts photos and they're not real, when he's lying about people. And so again, this has nothing to do with the Jewish religion as a whole, Judaism at all, nothing to do with it, and it has nothing to do with most Israelis either, because there are a lot of people within Israel who are also protesting what's going on, and they have been for years, especially since Netanyahu came back into power on my friggin' birthday, of 2022, and I knew that was going to be a friggin' bad idea, like a bad future for, anyways, and it was on my whiteboard. And they were warning us, and anyway, but it's just the timing is very suspect, and there have been so many different attacks on Christian communities, and so like this has not been at all reported to the same degree. In fact, we've been like they've been further causing division against Christians with the narratives and the rhetoric that RCMP, CSIS, etc. are pushing, calling people that are conservative or more traditional as extreme radicals. What is wrong with you? That is the opposite.
Justifications for doing these things too. So since he won't disclose that, I can disclose some of these methods since I know what they are, having been subjected to these attacks by CSIS and the RCMP and police in Toronto, Gatineau, and Ottawa, starting back in, first awakening to it in the summer of 2021. So it's been going on now for 4.5 years. And having moved to a different area and into a different province,
the battle between good and evil, heaven and hell, is an internal battle. And that's the lessons of Jesus and Satan.
Same methods still are being utilized.
Whatever you feed, the life that you choose to lead.
And these same things are being done. So some of the methods that they use are subjecting the target to extreme noise harassment all the time. They have people who are given specific state-funded vehicles on loan, and they use these vehicles. They're tampered with. The engines are tampered with so that they make extreme and excessive noise. They will send these cars to follow subjects of their harassment campaigns around everywhere they go. For me, they send them to drive back and forth continually out in front of my workplace all throughout the night, since I work the night shifts and I work alone. Knowing that I'll hear this, they send them to do that all throughout the night. They also work with criminal motorcycle gangs who swarm around, harass, stalk, and attempt to intimidate the law-abiding citizens who CSIS has slandered and put on these watch lists. So there's a clear connection to, literally a clear connection to criminal gangs who they use. As well, some of these motorcycle gangs have connections to the police and the military as well. And you can also find clear connections to drug trafficking with these motorcycle gangs, which CSIS uses at their disposal to criminally harass law-abiding citizens. So that is part of the noise harassment campaign that they also subject you to. And for an extended period of time, they have been having these motorcycle gangs continually follow me around to harass me, to threaten and attempt to intimidate me as I simply try to go to and from my job. And then when I'm at work, they have them drive back and forth in front of my workplace all throughout the night. Although they've cut back on that a little bit recently, since I've shown how much of it they've done in my videos. They've recently cut back on that. But that part of that could be attributable to the colder weather. So other methods that they use are as follows. First of all, they will have people in law enforcement, the police, the RCMP, compile extensive dossiers of lies, fabrications, slander, which are used to enlist people all around the subject of the harassment, neighbors, acquaintances, co-workers, sometimes even friends and family members, to take part in doing this 24/7 surveillance on the subject of the harassment. And of course, to do this, they have to utilize all lies to justify trying to get these people on board to do this. So extensive slander campaigns are utilized. And it doesn't matter if the subject of the harassment moves to a new neighborhood or even a new province or even a new country. The same slander campaigns will be run there where the corrupt Freemasons in local law enforcement, as well as Freemasons within these communities, will be used to go and spread extensive lies about these people so that they can enlist people to do what is essentially criminal harassment and stalking and do illegitimate, illegal surveillance against these people who they're harassing. So that's another method there that they utilize. And for obvious reasons, Daniel Rogers won't talk about that in front of the media. Another method that they use is having these same people who they've enlisted follow the subjects of their harassment around. They will have people follow you even into retail establishments and in grocery stores. They will have specific CSIS people or people who they've enlisted.
Yeah, it's not. I was going to say it's not just CSIS that does that. There are other government organizations that do that or hire people to do that. But there are also communities and groups that are very well coordinated now, and they're getting funding, etc., and training like Antifa, BLM, etc., and these other anti-fascist groups, far left groups, and far right. But there's more far left groups, unfortunately, that are doing this stuff, and they're doing it because they don't have a goddamn job, right, or a proper friggin' degree, right? Like, what are you going to do with your gender fluid studies friggin' PhD? Nothing in the real life, in the real world. I mean. Because these jobs, again, like these are the jobs that are getting cut by government, right? The ones that were not friggin' needed to begin with, but that this radical leftist government put in place to implement these friggin' social programs that they were profiting from, millions of dollars a year. And so, yeah, I'm going on another rant, but I had a point. Yeah. And and they organize on their own. So even with Alexa Lavoie from Rebel News, we had someone that was working within DND, working within the government, and he is the one that allegedly threw that smoke bomb at the Christian singer in Montreal when he was trying to sing, and he was not able to because he didn't have a permit. All this bullshit propaganda, again, an attack on Christians, and so she wanted to interview him over that. And then within minutes, there were people there that were trying to get her phone, that were came on bikes, etc., to harass and intimidate her. And yeah, so take it for what it is. It's not just government. There are unfortunately radical groups that are causing a lot of harm.
To enter the store when you enter, to follow you around, often to attempt to provoke altercations, to try and get the subject of the harassment to respond in some way which can be used for further slander. So they will have agent provocateurs wherever the person goes. And in many cases, they will attempt to provoke. For example, I have footage of one of these individuals who'd shown up at multiple different locations where I was. I believe he was sent by CSIS, following me around a grocery store, entering when I entered, attempting to slam his cart directly into mine. And after I narrowly avoided him when he tried to slam his cart into me, he then proceeded to continue to follow me around the store and then leave at the exact time I was leaving and follow me out. And then this same individual, this bald guy wearing a blue shirt, happened to show up at a totally different location when I was down by the waterfront. And he was sent to walk directly up to me and stand right next to me. And this is all done because the subject of the harassment will know it is openly breaking Canadian laws. It is criminal stalking and harassment. And so they are trying to provoke some sort of a response from the subject where the subject gets angry and confronts the person, which can then be recorded by the countless false witnesses that CSIS employs to slander the person. It can then be recorded and then presented as fabricated evidence to attempt to push lies that the subject of the...
It's not just CSIS that does this. My goodness, even local law enforcement does that. Unfortunately, more and more now in the last few years. Again, like we've had so many good people either get kicked out because they didn't get inoculated, or they were suspended and charged and vilified and moved to different positions and shut down immediately. Like, and so, yeah, and going after their own even. Like these types that he's talking about, the stuff like the criminal harassment and stalking, etc. I think that's exactly what was happening to Helen Bruce over being a professional, Ottawa Police Services for 23 plus years at this point. I was working with Ottawa Police Services, like I said, SACA for 7 of those years, the Sexual Assault Child Abuse Unit. She was trying to share information, medical and scientific and government data that was getting suppressed and censored and shut down. She was trying to share that with her chain of command. And again, she's still in the courts and looking for what her sentencing is. And the last I checked, she was over $100,000 in debt. And she couldn't find lawyers in this friggin' province of Ontario. Because again, we have a premier that's a friggin' leftist radical too, despite the fact that he goes under the conservative umbrella. He was just, anyway, he's not a conservative. He's such a corrupted scumbag. Anyways, I'm all over the place, but it's nowhere near just CSIS that does this. Nowhere near, not even close. A lot of law enforcement organizations, again, even like local, municipal, provincial, federal level do it. And there are other organizations that do it as well. Full stop.
Harassment is somehow mentally unstable. So these are methods that they use because everything that they use in these harassment campaigns has to be contingent upon deceit, since the people that they're harassing with these methods, for the most part, have done nothing wrong and have broken no laws. They have to fabricate these things to justify the criminal harassment, which usually stems from either the person speaking out against corruption, in some cases being a whistleblower, exposing police corruption, exposing corruption within public service sectors. And in other cases, it is literally passed on down where they target entire families.
Yep.
As hard as that is to believe, that has been my personal experience, where they've also targeted other members of my family. Although this system seems to have been in place in Canada for a long time, how active of a role CSIS themselves as an organization were playing back in those days, I don't know. But certainly the methods were the same, and these are the same methods that we can show correspond with methods that the East German Stasi would use against people who they consider to be dissidents, and that other communist regimes, such as those with communist despot Vladimir Lenin, would use to attack people who they felt were going against state-funded narratives and not following the directions of the state. So these same cruel and unusual punishments, which have to be used in deceitful ways, and also there are extensive methods used to try to discredit people if they try to bring forth footage to expose this online. I'll talk about that a bit in some of the future videos as well. But getting back to more some of the methods that they use.
Oh yeah, I'm just thinking some of the methods they used was, again, because it was like full-blown communist dictatorships, complete control, government, complete control of its of the citizens, and then like removing the rights of farmers, taking away their land if they didn't agree to it. Basically, just like, again, they were being so heavily taxed, and they were not making enough money. Sounds familiar with what's going on in Canada, especially with the carbon tax scam, etc. That's going on, and targeted attacks on farmers. Where I've been saying for years now that, like, even small local farms are very important in Canada. Like, we need to incentivize this so much more. And what we're doing is we're losing more farms and farmers. And directed attacks. Look what just happened to the ostrich farm. And, like, if that's not telling enough for you, okay, that we are heading in the same friggin' direction as communist dictatorships, I don't know what to tell you, right? When government can control, like, is complete, like, authoritarian, which it is getting slowly and slowly more the case, then and then this is where there's massive, massive death and suffering and harm of the citizens from within these countries. And so people were removed off their land after being completely exploited, or people were being forced without getting any payments to work, again, to feed the military, in order to feed the government, who was, again, killing them all and pushing them off of their lands. And again, we're talking about anywhere between 30 and 70 million people within Europe that were murdered by the government, communist government. I'm going to reiterate that. And during the same periods as, again, like World War I and World War II, like around like in the 19th century, same time period, more casualties, more death. But because it wasn't declared a world war, I guess we just can't talk about it, despite the fact that it's more lethal, slower, and it's the firearms were removed from them, so they were not able to protect themselves or defend themselves against an authoritarian regime. That's why there's a constitution. All right. And a lot of Canadians don't know their Canadian constitution that was repatriated in 1982, the year of my birth. Anyways, what else did I want to say about that? No, not much.
The reasons are obvious why Daniel Rogers won't disclose any of these methods, and a few more here. 24/7 surveillance, even within the home of the subject, is another method that is utilized. And this surveillance, they want you to know that you are under surveillance 24/7, even in your own home. And so they are using a lot of the advanced technology to do this. I can't claim to know exactly how that technology is used, but I can say for certain, based on my extensive documentation, that there are too many things that I've recorded that would lead me to the clear conclusion that there have been surveillance within all of the homes I've lived in for the past 4 years, and possibly even going back years before I was awake to what any of this was. So that is another thing. They will use this surveillance also to let the subject of the harassment know that they're being surveilled by having people exit at the same time they exit, having neighbors come out of the house at the same time they exit or go inside at the same time. And also by having people, if you live in one of these apartments or condos, oftentimes they will have people do things such as, tapping on the floor or making some sort of noise. And that is another thing that is utilized within the homes. They will have people who, especially if you're in an apartment complex or in a townhouse, that's why they want everyone in those places where they're as close as possible to their neighbors in these smart cities, because they will have these people make excessive amounts of noise, sometimes stomping on the floors if they're above you or banging on the walls. And then if you say anything about it, they're to say you're crazy and then call the police. So these are methods that they use, and all of these things done in a very deceitful way. And it's obvious why Daniel Rogers doesn't want to talk about these things, that they're involved in enlisting people to do these things. Because what is going on beneath the surface is there is a lot more than what you see on the outside. And so it's a very extensive program that goes on. And once you start to understand this, you also understand that there are things going on in this country where they control very large segments of the population.
Yep.
And they have enlisted them in general, and they get benefits and perks for doing whatever the state wants them to do. And these are the people who they will use as false witnesses to fabricate evidence against people who they're harassing, and also to participate in staged false flag events.
Exactly, yeah.
And some of them are even willing to exploit their own children, sadly enough, just to get material benefits from the state.
Yep.
Another method that they use is stalking and harassment by corrupt Freemason police officers,
It's not Freemason
firefighters,
police officers.
people in ambulances. They will use these vehicles to subject you to noise harassment with sirens wherever you go. They will have them follow the people who they're targeting in this way. They will have them work in coordination with these deceitful members of these communities who they have enlisted to lie about these people, to all gang up on the person and attempt to create fabricated instances so that police can write false reports, falsely claiming that the people who they're harassing somehow have quote unquote mental health issues, when in fact the people who are doing these things are the ones who are very sick and who have mental health issues. But a lot of it revolves around methods that they use to completely isolate the people who they're harassing from any support services, so that they are as vulnerable as possible, and so that they can try and discredit them as much as possible as they continue these cruel and unusual harassment tactics against them.
Okay, my mic was. Okay, it's still playing. Okay, so yeah, interesting video. I gotta figure out who the guy is. Maybe I'll reach out and try a collab. He had a lot of good points in there. Again, I don't agree with everything he was saying, especially about the occult groups like Skull and Bones and Freemasons all being criminals and not all being like them responsible for all the corruption that's going on within Canada. But anyways, on that note, I will leave it at that. And I hope that everyone has a wonderful rest of your day.